Matthias Ripp he studied historical geography in Bamberg, a very, very wonderful German World Heritage city. Between 2004 and 2007, he worked for the city of Bamberg in the area of World Heritage and Tourism. Since 2007, he has been the World Heritage Coordinator of the World Heritage Site, Old Town of Regensburg with Stadtamhof, is it right? His main tasks are networking with local, national and international institutions, the coordination and development of sustainable management strategies for the World Heritage of Regensburg, as well as inner city monitoring. He is active in many other activities, but he is mainly able to provide you with internships. So contact him. Matthias, thank you for coming, and I'm really happy to have you here today. And the topic of his thesis is Crisis, an opportunity for historical cities to build cultural heritage as a factor of urban resilience. I'm sure that you have heard the term resilience. It is a very modern concept developed in the last years, and it is for the first time that we have somebody here expert on that. Thank you for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Albers, and welcome to all of you. Listening to your conversation earlier, I should have started with the Faro Convention, which is about the heritage of the people and how important it is to link the heritage to the communities, which I'm a big fan of. So, first of all, let me ask, I will give this presentation, and it has three parts. The first one is a little bit about the work in Regensburg, what we do there. The second one is about the concept of resilience. And the third part is really linking it to governance, because in the end it all comes down to governance. If we don't have the good governance structures, we cannot implement very much. Any one of you who has been to Regensburg in Bavaria? Hands up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's not very much, so I'm glad I integrated the first part of my presentation. So this is again the structure of the presentation. So here you see an aerial view of the city of Regensburg, which has a quite large intact old town, because it was not bombed during World War II. We had a lot of bombs, but they were fortunately outside the old town quarter, with 2 exceptions, but that was not too bad compared to a lot of other German cities. It is situated in the northern part of the river Danube. We have a lot of activities now upcoming with the Danube region, by the way, if there are some people of you who are linked to the Danube region. In Europe, the strategy of the European Union first was the Alpine strategy, then they had the strategy for the Baltic region, and the new thing is the strategy for the Danube region. So there's a lot of money coming for the Danube region, and we try to build a lot of networks along the Danube, many of them around cultural heritage. There are some World Heritage sites and many, many potential World Heritage sites. A famous one is the extension of the Limes. You might have heard of the Limes, which has an area where it is situated on the ground and close to Regensburg. It is actually switching, and the river was the borderline between the Roman and the other places. So this will be probably put forward to the World Heritage Committee in 2 years' time. So there are a lot of opportunities in the Danube region, and I can only encourage you to have a closer look. It is also new for me because, you know, we were always facing the west, and only several years ago we were turning to face to the east, and the southeast was really a sort of blind spot, unfortunately. So here you have the aerial view from the World Heritage Site, Old Town of Regensburg with Stadtamhof. You see here, this is the city of Regensburg. It was the free city of Regensburg. It has its own system of law, and on the other side it was the part of Bavaria, but it was linked with the Stone Bridge, which is one of our important monuments, and for this reason the World Heritage Site is enclosing both areas, which is already a statement in itself. It is not only a part of the city, but it's about connecting, it's about joining these two parts. Some of the monuments, I'm not sure if you can see them. I mean, our most visited monument is, as in many European cities, the cathedral. Then we have the Old Town Hall, which is the place where the Imperial Diet was situated. The Imperial Diet was something like a very early European parliament. It was when Germany was not Germany, but it was a part of small pieces with their own heads, and these heads gathered in Regensburg and took important decisions. So it was really, when you want to look at the history of Europe and the history of the European Parliament, you will come to Regensburg. And I actually am planning to put this format forward for the European Heritage label, but only in a few years' time, when I'm not in the jury anymore. So other sites we have is the castle. This is the Princess of Thurn and Taxis. You may have heard of her. If you open the yellow press, she's everywhere. We had two VIPs in Regensburg. The first one was the last Pope. Unfortunately, he resigned. And the second one is this lady. And she's not easy to handle, but a lot of visitors want to go and visit this castle. It's basically a Baroque-style castle, which you can see in a lot of places over Europe. Then we have the Stone Bridge. As I already said, it's currently under renovation. It's our biggest renovation project. The budget is about 20 million euros, and it took already 6 years, and I think it will take 2 years more. So this is really a big project where we have a lot of national funding and funding from the Deutsche Stiftung Denkmalschutz and other sources. And very close to this place, which, as you can imagine, every tourist is visiting. We just opened in 2011 a visitor center for the World Heritage Site. It's located here in an old salt barn, and I will tell you more about it later. But just note that if you come to Regensburg, this is the first place you should go. It's free of cost, and it gives you an impression why Regensburg is on the World Heritage list. So this is a visitor center especially for the World Heritage Site. And we were the first one actually in Germany who made a special visitor center. I'll tell you later about it. Okay, a little bit of history. Regensburg is quite a young World Heritage Site. It was only listed in 2006. At that time it was the 32nd World Heritage Site. The ensemble is big. It's more than 180 hectares, and we have close to 1,000 individually listed monuments. You all know the difference between an individually listed monument and the ensemble. In the ensemble, you have to debate every new building with us intensely, even if it is not a listed building, but only because it is part of the ensemble. House owners don't like it very much. We have about 15,000 people living in the old town, and this number is actually rising. Why is it rising? Because for a sad reason, because basically the families are moving out of this lovely place, but they move outside because it's getting too expensive. We have a lot of gentrification, and the average price per square meter in the core is between 3,500 and 5,000 euros, so the families cannot afford. So the families go outside, and we have smaller flats, and therefore we have a rising number of people. Why was Regensburg listed? It was 3 criterions that were fulfilled. The first one was on architecture and urban development. It was a medieval trading center influencing the region north of the Alps. Of course, the trading was very closely connected to the river. The river was the highway, and the Saltborn, this building where we have the visitor center, was actually a place where a lot of goods were stored, basically salt, for the trading of the river. The second criterion was it was an important testimony of culture. It was an exceptional testimony to the cultural traditions in the Holy Roman Empire. And the last one is about explaining history. It's an outstanding example of a Central European medieval trading town with the different stages of development still visible. This is because we had no fire, We had no damage through war, and this is quite exceptional. In every town, in every house in the old town, you have so many different layers of history. Many times you find Roman remains if you dig in the ground, because it was also a Roman settlement. So you have a lot of different layers of history that you can still see today. This is a slide which looks very chaotic, but I use it always to explain the World Heritage Management as a cross-cutting topic. Because a lot of people think that World Heritage Management is only preservation or maybe a little bit of tourism, and it is not. And you see, this is the picture of one of the historic squares in the city of Regensburg, and in this picture you find a lot of different elements that are relevant for the World Heritage Management. And let me just take you through them in a very quick way. So, of course, World Heritage Management needs to deal with the homeowners. There are questions about preservation, about financing, about use, about accessibility, about the quality of life, noise issues, tax issues. The house owner is very often, when it comes to governance, the forgotten suspect. There are not many cities who really deal with their house owners. But in our case, and in many other cases, 85% of the buildings are privately owned. So we have to really tackle the private house owners. We have to explain, we have to find a level of communication. We do this in an annual event that we only make for the house owners. And we had one event where we really had a detailed presentation for them to explain them what does it mean to be on the World Heritage List, what are the regulations, where are potential funding sources, etc., etc. So if you take one message with you today, it's you need to think about the house owners. They are so often forgotten. Then, of course, it's a question of traffic. It's a difficult issue, you know, in all historical cities. It's a question about the accessibility and the quality of the urban space. It's questions of urban design, quality of chairs, tables, movable objects. This is a favorite one of a lot of architects. They like to deal in detail with the quality of the urban space, and it is important. It's also a question of the carbon footprint, climate change issues, especially in connection with the historic building stock. It's not easy. We cannot use solar panels. We cannot use insulation on the outside, but we must make something because the house owner will otherwise be desperate for the high price of the energy. We have the special topic of the churches. I mean, in Regensburg we have about 40 churches only in the World Heritage area. They are getting more and more of a problem because the church has less and less money, and they are knocking on our door very heavily and ask us to help them. But we are hesitating because we say if we help the first church, then we have to help all of them. And this is really a lot of money, even for a rich city like Regensburg is. So this is a question, what will we do with the church? We will see reuse of churches in the next years. All over Germany, now you only have it in North Rhine-Westphalia, but this is a topic to come. Then, of course, cultural events. We have a big debate. Do we have too many cultural events in the old town? Because what are the people living in the old town? I mean, let's be realistic about it. It's the dentist, it's the lawyer, it's the university professor. They don't like if the students are having a party every Friday night because there's a concert in the public realm. So we have to find a solution, how to find a good balance between these different factors. One way we are dealing with it is we have defined 5 weekends which are without any events in the old town. This is a sort of compromise, and we are very strict about it. So, of course, you have the inhabitants. It's about providing attractive functions, space for employment, accessibility, housing. And we still have a lot of students living in the old town. Now you ask why? Because it's so expensive. Because 20 years ago, the city of Regensburg was not so rich, and it was not so well renovated. And it was a strategy to put student homes, big ones, in the old buildings. And they are still there, and therefore we still have a lot of students living in the old town. So, of course, the topic of interpretation is very important, and it's sometimes hard to find the good knowledge, to make the good interpretation, to explain the complex historic details in easy words that the normal citizens can understand it. We made an effort in our visitor center where we put a lot of money in exactly this, making it very easy to access the historic information, not academic, but for the normal people on the street. I think this is very important, and it's an obligation by the World Heritage Convention. Then, of course, we have the visitors. There we have the bad word of marketing, but yes, it's there, and yes, it's also necessary. We need the tourists because a lot of functions in the old town are financed by the tourists, like hotels, like restaurants, like souvenir shops. But we also have the debate, do we have too much tourists already? Because we have a lot of cruise ships coming up the river Danube, and only last week our mayor took the decision to limit the number of cruise ships. It's the first time this has happened in Germany, so it was quite a big media event, but we think it's enough to have 1,300 cruise ships, which is already a very high number. What's the problem with the cruise ships? Do you have any idea? I mean, they come with a ship. The average price for a tour is about $10,000. The average age of the passenger of the cruise ships, it's only 4 companies from the US, is 71 years. Okay, so it's very old people, very rich people, but they do everything on the ship. They eat on the ship, they sleep on the ship, they have their shops on the ship, and they bring their own guide. But when they come to the city, they come in hordes. They come like 200, with the headphones. And the people have a problem if that is, for example, on a Saturday, where the city is already full for the people who are going to the shop, going to the market. So this is sort of a clash. And the question is, what do we get as a revenue from these cruise ships? It's not much. So we decided to limit this number of cruise ships. Of course, in the core of all is the historic monument with the preservation issues inside, outside, the upkeep of the building, etc. And also a big issue, as you can see in Regensburg, is the paving. What do we do with the surface? We have more and more handicapped people. We have an aging society. We have people in wheelchairs. I mean, we have these horrible cobblestones. If you imagine for someone in a wheelchair, this is a nightmare. So we have to find a way, what can we do to make the city accessible, but also keep the historic urban fabric as it was intended to be. So questions over questions, and all these questions are related to World Heritage Management. So my message here always, it's a cross-cutting topic, and we need people who have a lot of different experiences, who have studied 2 things, who have worked in different fields, and who bring really a lot of different experiences. What I really don't need much in my office is a specialist in a very tiny field, but who is very good and very deep in his tiny field, because I don't have much use of these specialists. So I need people who can make the connections, who have the different experiences, who are not really caught in their discipline, And it's hard to get these people, really. Okay, so basically it's all about the multifunctional character of the old town, and in this case of the World Heritage Site. So what are the effects of the World Heritage status? So first of all, we can have a look at really how to handle the heritage. And in Regensburg we have a lot of experience when it comes to urban regeneration. It all started in 1955. At that time the city was poor, and the old town was really a place where no one wanted to live, a lot of crime, a lot of decay, a lot of dirt, a lot of houses without running water, a lot of houses still without electricity. So there was the need to do something. And then in 1973 there was a working group created with 6 different German cities. It's called the Arbeitsgemeinschaft Historische Städte. And they managed to get the central government to make new funding possibilities for the urban regeneration. It was for the first time in Germany, and this money really helped to start things up, because to regenerate a whole quarter costs a lot of money. And as you can imagine, in the 1950s, the cities in Germany were not so rich. It was just too close after World War II. So there was the need for central money to get these things started. And one strategic instrument to do this was a traditional master plan of the urban regeneration. You might have heard of that one of Bruges, which is the most famous one in Europe and was at that time really industry leading. And in Regensburg they created a similar one, a Regensburg development plan in 1977, and then it was continued in 2005. So some pictures that you get an impression of the classical before-after pictures. I mean, this is now really the most popular place, and as you can see, no cars anymore, but a lot of events going on, maybe too much. And before it looked like this, you know, it was the city made for the cars, and every public space was a parking space. And the funny thing is, I mean, this was not started by the local government, but it came from the people. There was one event where the people made a smart thing. They made a big party, and in this party they managed for the first time to keep the cars out. And everyone was so fascinated and liked it so much that this was really the beginning of the transformation. So it was totally bottom up, and a lot of opposition from the local government. So this is really the success of the people. Here you can see some houses like they looked before and after. I mean, today, in my opinion, we have maybe a little bit too much renovation because we have about 96% of the houses are renovated. So some parts of the city where you have an atmosphere of decay, which is sometimes also needed, you know, for some functions, is a little bit missing, in my opinion. So this is the renovation of the stone bridge. Here you can see it's a tent, and this is a moving tent, which is not moving on a daily basis, but on a sort of biannually base. Under this tent, the renovation works goes on, and this bridge was also used for public transport, for individual transport. It was used by cars up till 1997. So we have the problem that we don't have a lot of bridges between the two parts of the city, and it was then closed in 1997, and till 2008 it was still used by buses, and then for the renovation we stopped the buses, and there will never be buses on the bridge anymore for statical reasons, because it's causing a lot of damage to the bridge. And on this slide you still see the renovation 2010, 2014. This was our dream. It will probably be finished now in 2020, and the price will probably be not 20 million but 30 million. But that's how it is. We cannot change it, because to renovate a bridge like this is really, it's handwork. You literally have to take every stone and evaluate the strength of the stone. And if it's not strong enough, you have to change it. So you cannot make a good prediction or planning for renovation like this. It's really working on the training on the job, sort of. Here's a picture inside, if you're interested. This is how it looks inside this tent. They're taking apart the surface of the stone bridge, and they are actually sealing it somehow, that the water and even worse, the salt in winter cannot go below the surface. And they also renovated the handrails, sort of. It's made of stone. Okay, so when it comes to the World Heritage Coordination Unit, what I'm doing, we basically are dealing with 3 different levels, as you can see here. We have the local level, which most of our projects are aiming at. We have the national level, and we also have some international projects. I have to go here to read it. So basically on the local level, what we do is we run the visitor center, which has about 300,000 visitors per year, so it's very well visited. in the visitor center we have also non-permanent exhibitions, so it's a constant change of things. Does it work? Okay. We have in the visitor center we have, for example, audio guides in different languages, and it has open every day of the year from 10 to 7 in the evening. It's free of entrance, and people really like it a lot because we made it very playful. We tried to leave our academic house in the tree and climb down and find the nice words and make it small and interesting, and there's no lessons learned you need to take away, but you can go there and everyone can take what he likes. So that's basically the story. So another big thing we do on the local level is the annual World Heritage Day. It's a very big event where we basically reach about 10,000 people. We have different topics. I tell you more about it later. And of course we have cooperations with the local university, with the local club of history, with the local museums, etc. So one of the tools is cooperation. On the national level, we are engaged in ICOMOS. We have a working group of German World Heritage cities under the auspices of the Deutsche Städtetag, where we exchange and do some lobbying and try to really also influence the political level for new money for the World Heritage sites, because we need money on a constant level. Maybe you've heard that. Speak up loud. Okay. Maybe you've heard that in Germany there was this program from the central government where they put 270 million only for World Heritage sites. But it has ended now. It was a wonderful program. I mean, the 40 World Heritage sites loved it because we can do all the things that we were dreaming of. And for example, we took part of the money for the visitor center. About 1 million of the financing of the visitor center was from this national program. But now this national program is finished, so we need to find, and we are fighting at the moment to have annually a budget in the Städtebauförderungsbudget, which should be something between 10 and 20 million. And this would help the World Heritage sites very much to have a constant program. And on the international level, we are engaged, for example, in the organization of World Heritage Cities. Maybe you've heard of this. If not, you can check the website. It's an organization based in Quebec, Canada, which is where the cities are organized. It's close to 300 cities, and we just had the World Congress in Arequipa, Peru, 3 weeks ago on the topic of resilience. The next one will be in Jeonju, Korea, on the topic of citizens' involvement. So what you just said will be in 2017 in Jeonju. And there are also possibilities for young professionals to get scholarships to go there. So you want to check out if you want to become involved. This is really an organization, one of the few. I mean, ICOMOS is academic. And the OWHC is one of the few organizations where things are really going down on the ground to very specific projects. And there are funding possibilities for projects. You can check out which is your region, because this organization works with 7 regions worldwide. So we are responsible for Northwest Europe and North America, but you want to check out the World Heritage City, which is where you're coming from or where you want to work for, in which region it is, and want to get in contact. So we have basically 4 different fields what we do. The first one is coordination and contact point. The second one is about the monitoring. The third one is public relation and awareness raising. And the fourth one is networking and scientific activities. If we have a closer look, the coordination does mean basically that there's someone there to answer questions. We receive a lot of questions from students, from members of the parliament, from members of the city council, more and more from other World Heritage cities. We have a lot of delegations coming and asking how, for example, did you make the management plan? How did you set up the visitor center? These practical issues. Or we have just become a World Heritage Site. How do you organize it in your city administration? Should it be in the Department for Preservation? Should it be in the Department of Tourism? Should it be in the Department of Economics? How do you organize it in a good way? These are the questions we get asked a lot. Then we made the World Heritage Management Plan. I will give you a quick guide through this in a minute. And of course it's a general, what you call strategy and project development. We are involved in a lot of European projects. The most famous one was one which you might want to check on the website. It's called HERO, Heritage is Opportunity. And there we developed a methodology how to make management plans. And we have guidebooks published in many languages. So if you're interested in management planning, you should have a look, because there you really have a very clear description and the experiences of 9 different European cities, including big ones like Liverpool and Naples. So the World Heritage Management Plan, I will make it very... Are you really interested in management planning? Can you give me a hands up who is interested in the management plan? One? Okay. I take more time. I got the message. So basically, the main objective of the management plan was to balance the safeguarding of the World Heritage Site and the economic development. We just talked about it. I mean, economic development is a need. I mean, it's for every city. I mean, it's today. We need to give the mayors the message that you can develop despite you are a World Heritage Site. If you fail in this task, you will never get a date with him anymore. I mean, this is how it is. So we try not to build up these 2 different poles, you know, preserving and developing, but somehow to get it together. And for this, the instrument was the management plan. Other objectives was to secure a multifunctional, vital and attractive old town for residents and visitors. And the third one was, of course, to manage the conflicting needs. We have so many conflicting needs in our city. The city has 150,000 inhabitants. I didn't mention it earlier, but it is growing very rapidly. We have every year about 2,000 new inhabitants. So we have a lot of development pressure, and most of the pressure is not on the old town, but it's on the, we as geographers call it zone in transition. It's the zone directly after the World Heritage area, where you have, for example, the public transport facilities. You have the central bus station, you have the railway station, you have the parking garages, and you have a lot of heavy traffic functions. And there we have the most pressure to develop things. So each property has the need for a management plan, as it is already said in the operational guidelines, paragraph 108. I mean, there's not too many words there, regrettable. It's said that each nominated property should have an appropriate management plan or other documented management system which should specify how the outstanding universal value of property should be preserved, preferably through participatory means. Okay, now what are we doing with this? I mean, this is not really much of advice UNESCO is giving us. I mean, it's a very loose idea, but to take this as a start and go to the fact that you know everything, how to make a management plan. There were a lot of different steps in between. There's a good publication on management plan by Birgitta Ringbeck. You will find it in English on the website of the German UNESCO Commission, and it gives you a good idea about the structure of a management plan, what should be in. But this is only half of the job. The second half is how to do it, you know. The scoping, how to identify your stakeholders, how to deal with your politicians, how long does it take, how much does it cost, where do you find a good moderator, what is a good system to talk with your citizens about it. I mean, these are so important questions for the cities, and I've seen a lot of management plans also going not so well for these questions, because they only take the list of the content and then they start to find an expert and then they start. But they forget about the most important phase. The architects call it planning phase 0. Planning phase 0 is, you know, when you think about how to do it, to make the architecture of the process, who to integrate and who is my engine in the city who will really keep the process going. And to do this, we made this hero project where we tried to give answers to these questions. So to give you an idea of the timeline, we started in 2007 for the management plan, and we ended in 2011. So the country of Turkey just started making management plans for all Turkish World Heritage cities 1.5 years ago, and they phoned me and asked me if I would like to do it. I said, what's your timeline? And they said, 1 year. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. I mean, you can make a management plan in 1 year, but then it is a plan that is written by one person sitting in his desk and only doing paperwork. And this is not the idea of the exercise. As you said, we must to have the connection to the community. We must to involve the community. In my opinion, the most important job of the management plan was to establish a communication system with the people and to make the World Heritage topic not only a topic of the public administration, but a topic of the whole local society. And it's really worth investing money, time and brain in a management plan. In my opinion, it's the backbone for every good World Heritage management. So what we did is, in the management plan, we had basically 2 working groups. One was a more internal one, and in a second one we included the citizens. And we made a quite classical approach. We tried to find the main objective for the World Heritage Site in a very condensed way, and from there we went in different objectives on specific topics. And this umbrella that we found in a session that took about 5.5 hours, just to give you an idea on that, was the unique World Heritage Old Town Regensburg with Stadtamhof as a center of European history is to be preserved in its substance, so preservation first. It is essential to give citizens and guests an understanding of the great value of the World Heritage Site, so interpretation, you already have it here on the highest level. And I think I have a problem here with the slide, but the second part of the sentence basically this: the unique World Heritage Old Town of Regensburg with Stadtamhof is also a place where a lot of commercial activities are happening, and it should be made possible also for the city to develop further. So these 2 poles we try to incorporate in this umbrella objective. From there we worked in 6 different fields. We split it up. So we dealt with the built cultural heritage, we dealt with cultural and tourism, with economic development, with urban development and planning, with environmental issues and recreation, and awareness raising and science. So in the end, if you want to have a look at our management plan, it's on our website, regensburg.de. You find it in an English version also. And you will find in the final product of the management plan, you will find these 6 different fields, and for each field you will find an objective and you find actions. And this exercise to define the fields and the actions we did 2 times. First we did it in a small group where we had the other departments of the city, but also the close to the city ones, you know, the city marketing, the tourism office, which is not 100% city anymore, but sort of private. So we made this group and we worked in this methodology. And the same exercise we did with the citizens. So we started with the citizens from 0 and said, okay, here we have these 6 different fields. And we had a process where we asked the citizens also about the ideas. And in our final management plan, we have the actions that came from the citizens also clearly marked. So the citizens see what we give is still there. And when we have thrown something out, we explained it. So these are just the steps. It's very logical what to do. I mean, the first one is to collect everything you have, you know, all the planning documents, because you need to take everything into account. If you don't do it in the process, someone will come and say, oh, we already have this in the document from 2008. You don't want to have this situation, so you have to be very thorough and have a close look what is there. The second one was the discussion of the concepts, the identification. And the third one was really the multidisciplinary work on the strategies, on the measures to really define what we should do. I mean, it was only a suggestion. The decision was taken, of course, by the city council. The civic participation, we invested a lot of money and time into it. We basically had two different phases. We had the first phase was what we call the information phase. So we tried to really do a sort of marketing and explain what is the management plan process and what are your opportunities, what can you do. And we did this through newspapers, through the website. We even went to the pedestrian zone and had a sort of box where we hand out brochures. So the idea was that everyone is aware of the process and no one is left out. Because what is often happening when you do this participation process, what is often happening? You take your list of your 40 clubs or NGOs, but I mean they are somehow already a defined part of the whole, but they are not the whole. And we wanted to give everyone the chance to participate. And the second phase was in December till February from 2009 to 2010. We first made an information evening, and then we had this basically participation event where the people could come and discuss and also suggest actions. Okay, so another part of our job is the communication of the World Heritage activities. I'm coming to resilience. I'm with close steps, okay? Do we have some time or? Half an hour, okay, yeah, this is okay. Okay, 25. So communication activities include the World Heritage Day, public relations, the visitor center, etc. I will skip some of this. We basically have three instruments how we work. The first one is cooperation, the second one is events, and the third one is publication. So this is our grid that we are using. Here you see some impressions from the World Heritage Days. It's an annual event with different topics. Here you see more in detail ideas of what we do with cooperation events and publications. Some impressions of the visitor center. The visitor center is made up by 5 different thematic topics. The first one is UNESCO World Heritage in general, explaining the idea. The second one is about city development. The third one is about the trading town, because that was one of the reasons why we got on the World Heritage list. The fourth one is on city life, and the fifth one is of the city of the imperial diet. And what is special about it? It was a unique spatial concept. We have 3 levels of information, and you can see there's not a lot of text on the wall. So we basically work with a lot of pictures and interactive elements. We have some links where we guide the people to the other museums and places in the city. So the visitor center is only the starting point, but it's not going too much in detail. And this is our cooking recipe. It's about 70% written text, it's 20% multimedia, and it's 10% original things. And the feedback we receive is very good, so we think it works quite well. Well, networking and science, I think I will skip this one and come to the concept of resilience. Okay. So resilience, what is it all about? I found this nice definition from the Rockefeller Center, who is, anyway, it's worth to check out the website also of the Rockefeller Center and the Stockholm Center of Resilience. You will find a lot of ideas for conferences, scholarships. They have this wonderful program which is called 100 Resilient Cities, where cities can apply and get money for a so-called resilient officer who will work in the city for 3 years and make a resilient plan. I'm not sure if this is enough, but it might be a good start. So the definition from the Rockefeller Foundation is resilience is the capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses and systems within a city to survive, adapt and grow no matter what kinds of chronic stresses and acute shocks they experience. To explain it, I usually use this table because most people understand it behind. Who of you has heard the term resilience before? Okay, who of you can explain it? Okay, okay, very good.
Yeah, maybe that's making capacity for the community and the cities to face to the different shocks like environmental, social, cultural, took me to stay at their identity and then the structures and their identity and the structure of the city.
Yeah, I think what you said is not wrong. It's a lot of different aspects, because I think resilience has so many different facets, because it's very complex. And let's have a look what's the difference between sustainability and resilience, because a lot of people tell me it's the same, and it is definitely not. So if you have a look here, the background of sustainability was forest management in Germany, basically in the 18th century. Resilience comes from psychology in the 1950s. It was developed in the US, and basically they found out that children of difficult families, some of these children, well, you know, they had alcoholic sexual abuse and all these things, and some of the children, they made very well in life, despite all the bad things they had experienced. And they had a look, what are the characteristics of these children? What is inside their brain? What is their behavior? And this is how resilience started. And the objective of sustainability is to maintain a natural resource base. Resilience is not about maintaining. Resilience is about flexibility. It's to make systems flexible. So this is a very big difference, you know. Sustainability is linear, and resilience is really systemic. This makes it very difficult because it's so complex. I don't read the definitions, you can do by yourself, but I mean, this is by the type linear, systemic, and the trend is for sustainability to enable economic development without damaging the natural resource base. I mean, it has its own right, and it is still there, and we use it all the time. But as I tried to say before, I mean, it comes from the 18th century, where you can plan how to grow your forest over a timeline of 50 years. Now, what are we doing today if we have an earthquake or if we have some very sudden things? We have to be more flexible. And this is where resilience really come into the play. So the trend in resilience is to stimulate flexibility, adaptability, and risk preparedness in order to deal with sudden or long-term changes. It's not only about sudden changes. A lot of the publications are only dealing with disasters. I don't believe in it. I think we need resilience also for the long-term change, like demographic change, climate change, digital change. For the cities, digital change is probably the biggest change that we see. When it comes to the level of complexity, sustainability is fair. It's okay, people can handle it. Resilience is very high. So this is why a lot of people don't dare to really touch it, and they think it's too complex and it's only academic. So the level of integration for sustainability, it's semi-integrated, and resilience really needs to be integrated in everything. And this makes it so hard even on the local level. The parameters involved for sustainability, you have a limited number of parameters. For the resilience, you have a very high number of parameters. And when it comes to the implementation, I mean, this is the traditional implementation was through management plans, development plans. And for the resilience, we have to look at new governance models. We have to change the attitude on the values. We have to empower the communities, as you said. And of course, the prioritization of cross-cutting topics, initiatives, and developments. So this is basically to give you an idea about the difference and about the definition of resilience. Looking in the history, as already said, it first came up in the psychology. In the last 30 years, then it spread to other disciplines, most important sociology, biology, ethnology. And only in very recent years, we see it used in architecture. In heritage is basically very new, when it is seen that heritage is a resource for resilience, and heritage is not only the object that needs to be kept. So just a sort of visualization, it's really about this adaptability, about the flexibility. So the question is a little bit resilience versus persistence. persistence is sustainability, it's keeping, and resilience is it's more flexible. And the questions we have to answer is, what are the attributes and categories of resilience? How can we really bring it down to the very specific stuff, and how can we stimulate it? Let's have a look at this. So, in my opinion, we have 4 different fields in connection with architecture and urban heritage. The first one is design and construction. The second one is planning. The third one is the use. And the fourth one is it's about the materials that are used. So if we have a closer look at these. So in design of construction, this means what is the structure of the building, what is the volume of the building, what is the construction technique, what is the energy efficiency of the building. And if you look, for example, at this floor plan of a historic house, you can see that, first of all, I already gave the example this morning. When you think of a historic house and a new house, which one is more resilient? What do you think? Depends. Always good answer. Why?
I mean, I guess you're expecting us to say the old one is going to be more resilient?
No, I'm expecting nothing.
Because it's if you compare a really modern house of glass and a very old one on earth, maybe it's going to be the earth one, but we can also put today earth and it's going to be resilient as well.
Yeah. Okay, this was a question of the materials, but the point, yeah. But the point I wanted to make is, you know, if you think of you build a house now with an architect, you can only think of the electric installations. You spend in Germany about 50,000 euros only for the electric installations. 20 years ago it was 5,000 euros. So every room is so defined for one single function, okay? When you build an architectural house. In Germany it is like this at the moment a little bit. And this makes it very hard if you want to change everything. If you look at this historic house, I mean, it is a flexible system. You can change it. You already had the fire in the most economic place, you know, the fireplace. It was built very energy efficient already at that time. You can of course build also flexible houses now, but in Germany they are the exception, because usually every room is defined for a single purpose. And in historic houses, usually the rooms had much more than one purpose. And this is a little bit the key to changing. You have an objection.
You should be an architect. You should find another architect.
Okay, I'm open to the suggestions. To give me one. Where are we going? So basically, when it comes to the category of planning, you have traditional planning systems like long-term development plans, a collection of written statements of stakeholders. You have the round table, you have the specialization and diversification of planning authorities. So this is all going to more specialization. And what we need in resilience is more flexible planning instruments. So we need officers with a broad and general background who are at ease in more than one discipline. We need to have a dialogue with the citizens and stakeholders, and we need to also implement a task force approach. For example, we have the topic of the refugees at the moment very much in Bavaria. I mean, only a task force approach was suitable to deal with this. We cannot make a long-term plan. We don't have the time. And of course, the smart organization of the cross-cutting topics. So, adapted use. Here's one example. It's in the city of Telč in the Czech Republic. You see these old houses. Has any one of you been there, Telč? It's a really nice place. You should go. You see these houses, and they are very long, and they have this central room. And I mean, I say room because it was a room with so many different functions. You know, it was used to store things. It was used if you had a lot of people there for receptions. It was used sometimes to bring the animals in when there was very bad weather, etc., etc. So this is really a good example of a multifunctional space. Another one is in Franconia. You have a lot of covered balconies that were used to store things, but also in summer for accommodation. The people slept there, and for drying laundry, etc. So you have these multifunctional rooms, which are very typical for a lot of historic buildings. When it comes to appropriate materials, it's probably the most easy one to understand. I mean, if you look at this roof with the tiles, and if you think of a modern roof made from tin, from metal, if this roof is damaged, you exchange one tile, okay? If the tin roof is damaged, you basically replace the whole roof. And it's the same with materials in the street. If you think of asphalt or cobblestones, if you have cobblestones, you change one. If you have the asphalt, you have to make the whole street new. So this is, in my opinion, the proof that a lot of the traditional materials make the buildings much more resilient because you can much more easily repair them. Just another example. So, this is also one definition I found that I liked, maybe to wrap it up on resilience and then have a look at how it goes together with governance. I mean, he says, and that's what you said, the process of interaction between the public sector and the various actors or groups of the civil society, this is really resilience. And the distinction between government and governance is the notion of civil society defined as the public life of individuals and institutions outside the control of the state. So it's really governance that brings this together, and we have to look at governance if we want to implement resilience. We cannot only describe resilience and wait for it to come. How can we stimulate resilience through governments? And these will be my last slides. So we think there's one way to go, and it's called integrated urban development in governments. It's really bringing things together, and you see some of the factors that the cities are facing. So at the moment we see in many cities the organization of the administration is one-dimensional. We have the sectoral approach, we have hierarchical structures of command, we have monodirectional communication, and we have very often a singular view and understanding of a topic. And we need to change this. How can we do it? One clue can give a good document published by the European Commission 2011, and I suggest you also to look it up and read it. It's a really good report. It's called Cities of Tomorrow, where they examined many European cities, and they came to the conclusion we have to deal with challenges in an integrated, holistic way. We have to match place and people-based approaches. We have to combine the formal government structures with the flexible informal governance structures. Informal governance makes my mayor very nervous, but it is there in every city, and we need to find a way how to channel it, how to establish a communication line. We need to develop governance systems that are capable of building shared visions, and to cooperate, of course, with the different actors. So these are some suggestions from the European Commission, and we added to this on the local level because I gave this presentation in front of 50 mayors, and the mayors, of course, want to know what can I personally do, yeah, to implement this resilience. And I try to break it down. So first, try to hire experienced personnel with a broad range of background skills. I made this point a lot of times, but I think it is so important. Broaden your view, be more generalist. Don't travel the road to specialization. We have too many specialists. Be broad. The second one, organize your cross-cutting topics high up in the hierarchy, above the thematic sectors. I give you one example. For example, our mayor had a special unit dealing with the refugees and integration, and he organized it directly in his office. He didn't say it's job of the councillor for planning or building or job of this councillor. He took it out, and it works so well. The third one is try to install responsible link persons between the sectors. What do I mean by this? I mean, if you have a cross-cutting topic like the refugee topic, you still need to have people in each of the sectors who deal with it, and you need to choose them, and you need to say, you are responsible. You are the person in this unit who deals with this topic, and you meet regularly with this central unit just to work on this. The fourth one is more a culture-based thing, but this is where the mayors can do a lot, to stimulate a culture where really new ideas are welcomed. and engages enthusiasm and the creation of expertise. And this is a cultural thing, because in a lot of local administrations you have a very different culture. The culture is, don't make a mistake, I blame you. And this is not very helpful. And the fifth one is, of course, the continuous learning through evaluations and feedback from existing policies. This is also, we need to get the local administrations more learning organizations. And it's not everything set for the next 20 years, but they need to evolve much more and much quicker than they do at the moment. So the management plans, of course, can help. They can, in my opinion, be really the intellectual framework for the implementation of resilience. And what can we do there is, of course, the development of integrated heritage management plan. It can be the start of a professional heritage management in a city. Then the collaborative development with the stakeholders. So please don't make the management plan by yourself, as still many cities are doing, even today in this hour. And the third one, a strong operational background also for the implementation of the plan. The biggest mistake with management plan is not the management plan itself, but it's that it's never been carried out. I know so many cities that have a nice and shiny, 200 pages color publication, but when you ask them 5 years later, they shrug, they have no idea. So one way to keep this up is what we did in Regensburg is we had this group working on the management plan, and we meet every year 2 times, and we have a look how things are progressing. And I have people responsible for each of the different fields. You remember the 6 fields? I have one person specially responsible in this group, and I ask them to report on the actions. Which actions have been carried out? Where is a problem? Where do we need to go to different politicians to steer things a little bit up? So I try to keep it running. And we just published an intermediate report on our management plan where we found out that about 65% of the actions are carried out or underway. So it's not so bad from 2011 to 2015, but many cities forget this. And of course, the last one is that the human factor of heritage management is so important. And I also have to say this, of course, to the universities who are active in this field. We cannot emphasize enough to train the students and the young experts in the skills. And what do I mean by skills? Skills to be a good moderator, skills to be a good communicator, skills how to organize participation processes. I mean, there's a science behind, All these things are so important. I've seen so many projects fail where there was a lot of money and there was a political will, but there was not the skilled person who can really carry it out. So, basically, this is my conclusion, my last slide. I think urban governance needs to progress from compartmentalized, reductional linear approaches to sector management, to a systems approach, embracing interdisciplinary societal coordination and facilitation. So this is really the idea of integrating everything, and this is my last slide. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a lot of questions. Thank you very much.